Bring into the conversation Democratic Congressman from California, Ted Lieu. He serves on the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committees, and he was an impeachment manager for the second impeachment of President Donald Trump. Congressman, thank you so much for your patience as we were juggling some of that breaking news there. First, let me just broadly speaking here, get your reaction to what has been presented so far from both the chair, Benny Thompson, and the vice chair, Liz Cheney, just within the last couple of minutes. The argument that Liz Cheney made about the three specifics as to why Mark Meadows, it's not about the symbolism of sending a message with the holding him in contempt. It's because there is real substantive questions that he needs to account for.
Thank you, Ayman, for your question. It's actually simpler than that. The January 6th committee is a bipartisan committee authorized under the House of Representatives. You can't just ignore this committee, which is what Mark Meadows is doing. Any witness that does that will be held in contempt. So Congress is going to hold Mark Meadows in contempt, and that is the appropriate step. It's not because it's Mark Meadows. It's because you can't, under American law, simply ignore a valid congressional committee.
We've been, as David was just saying, we are still learning the scope of the communications and the details of this plot. Do you think we fully understand just to what extent this White House, whether it was through the Department of Justice and Jeffrey Clark, as alleged there by Liz Cheney, whether it was the pressure phone calls on the Georgia Secretary of State, do we have a full understanding, you think, of how close we were for this administration to derail our democracy?
We do not yet have a full understanding, but with every passing day, the facts and details are more and more alarming. We had a PowerPoint that was basically a roadmap to a coup. We had people who wanted to do an insurrection have direct access to the chief of staff of the former president, Mark Meadows. And then you have all these text messages from Mark Meadows' cell phone that shows that people understood what was happening. This was an attack on our Capitol. It was an attack on our democracy. It was an insurrection. And no one was doing anything about it, including the President of the United States. And we need Mark Meadows to explain to American people what was the former president doing in those hours and hours while this attack was happening on our Capitol.
Do you believe that there's a pressure in terms of the time that Congress is under to get those answers? Because are you at all concerned that by sending this out to the DOJ to prosecute Mark Meadows, it could create a legal process that does not get resolved for months, if not at least by the end of next year, when there are midterm elections and Congress may switch from the Democrats leading this investigation to Republicans who would want to stonewall it?
I am absolutely concerned, which is why I have legislation that will allow the House of Representatives to execute our inherent contempt power. It's a power the Supreme Court has upheld. We can use it to fine witnesses or to put them into confinement. It's time we use that, because right now, the trial for Steve Bannon, for example, is not set till August. For Mark Meadows, it'll probably be even further. And when you can delay enforcement of subpoenas that long, it effectively renders subpoenas meaningless. And I highly urge the House Legal Counsel to reverse course, because the strategy that they have employed for the last few years has not worked. Congressional subpoenas have been rendered largely meaningless by people who want to evade them.
Let me give you two examples that were mentioned by the January 6th committee. One text from a lawmaker unnamed to Mark Meadows reads, Pence, as president of the Senate, should call out all electoral votes that he believes are unconstitutional as no electoral votes at all. The Washington Post is describing another one that reads in part, the committee also wants to know more about messages received regarding apparent efforts to encourage Republican lawmakers in certain states to send alternate slates of electors to Congress in an attempt to undo Biden's win. In text, a member of Congress told Meadows that the plan was highly controversial, and Meadows texted back, I love it. We heard Committee Chair Thompson say that he wants to discuss those in the subpoenas. What is the importance of doing so, you think? Any ideas of who these less than 10 lawmakers are that are among your colleagues?
What this evidence shows is this wasn't just a random attack on our Capitol. This was an attack on our Capitol in an attempt to nullify the election. It was to keep the former president in power. This was an attempted coup. They weren't attacking the Capitol because they were upset about tax rates or upset about climate change. They were attacking the Capitol because they wanted the Electoral College to not be certified, to have those results overturned, basically overturning the will of the American people. This is something that has to be absolutely investigated and that people responsible need to be held accountable.
All right, Congressman Ted Lieu in Washington. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate it. Jonathan, let me come back.